When I first started learning Chinese, it seemed to me like my brain was doing a lot of work and I could feel it. I could feel that I was tired mentally from coming to grips with all these new concepts. And it's easy to think, oh gosh, this is such a hard language. Why did I choose this hard language? Talking to Chinese people, they often say that when they start to learn English, they feel like they're making great progress. And as they move up to more and more advanced stages of learning English, they say it gets harder and harder. I think you'll find that with us English speakers learning Chinese, it's the other way around. You're finding it a bit tough at the beginning, but as you move along, you just really start to make progress and it gets easier. Chinese grammar is very straightforward. We don't tend to do a lot of transformations, moving words around within the sentence in order to just meet a grammar rule. Sometimes you do it because you want to put a particular word into focus, so you might move it in the sentence to a more prominent place. But if you just look at plain vanilla sentences, they don't change nearly as much as English or other languages. For example, in English and a lot of other languages, we've got to shuffle words around to make a statement into a question. In English, you also have to pay attention to pronouns. If I want to make a sentence using a noun or a pronoun, I have different word order choices available. Give me the book, I can say that. But say I want to use it instead of book. Give me it, it sounds wrong. So I have to say, give it to me. In Chinese, you can use the same word order, whether it's a full noun or a pronoun. 把书给我, 把它给我. If you look at the Japanese sentence structure, it's clearly not in the same word order as what we're used to in English. I have a blue car in English and in Chinese is roughly the same order. In German, we can see that the word order is different in a main clause than in a subordinate or dependent clause. The verbs and nouns or pronouns swap around. If you look at the bottom of the page in French, the normal way is to put the adjective after the noun. A black jacket, but we have un manteau noir. The tricky thing with French though is not just that you learn that's opposite from English, because sometimes there are these pesky exceptions that come in and you have to put the adjective in front of the noun, the same as in English. And that's an extra bit of gymnastics your brain has to do if you're learning French that in Chinese you really don't have to think about. It's the same as the basic English word order, which is a real saving of effort for us. Another thing you have to do in English and lots of other languages is if you have a word that's, say, a noun, and you want to use the same idea for a verb, you often have to change it. The same for adjectives, adverbs, other parts of speech. You put these little tags on the end, sometimes a prefix on the front, and that lets you use the word in a different grammatical function. But in Chinese, you don't have to think about it. If you learn a word as a verb, but later on you're making a different sentence in a different situation, you think, gee, this would make sense as a noun. You can just go right ahead, use it as a noun. You don't have to put any extra bits on, don't have to take any bits off, don't have to change any vowels to a different pronunciation, don't have to put umlauts on the top. You just go right ahead and use it. Sometimes you put an extra particle into the sentence, but the big win is that the word form itself doesn't change. Look at German just for example. Now imagine you're learning a language like German. You're going to spend hours staring at charts like this, trying to memorize them. In Chinese, you can relax about all of that. And the second reason is Chinese is easier because of the vocabulary. Chinese vocabulary builds up. You learn easy words in the beginning, and then when you get to more advanced words, they're actually, lots of them are combinations of those easy words you already know, instead of brand new words. English vocabulary, we've got Germanic origin words, we've got French, which ultimately most of that comes from Latin, we've got direct borrowings from Latin, and we've got loads of words in English that come from ancient Greek. And what that means is that you get synonyms that don't look anything alike. And so we have hostile or belligerent. It means roughly the same thing. But if you look at the two words, there's no clue in there to tell you that belligerent is something to do with hostile, or geriatric has to do with the elderly. The word itself doesn't give you any clue. So you'll find that if you want to talk about the nucleus of an atom, you're not going to talk about the nucleus of an apple, even though it's sort of a related idea. And so the English vocabulary has a lot of complexity to it that you may not notice. But let's compare that to Chinese. Chinese builds up words using elements from words that you already know. Look down the bottom, jodhpurs. In Chinese that is ma ku, which means horse trousers. Nice and easy, no difficult spelling. If you know the word horse and you know the word trousers, then congratulations, you can remember right now, just from watching this video, you can remember the word jodhpurs is ma ku. All of these words have at least one element that you'll know if you've done Year 1 Chinese. And let's just look at the first one, protein. What that's made up of is 蛋白质, which literally means the stuff from egg white. Now, isn't that a nice way of expressing the idea? Now let's look at some examples from English. All of these words have something in common. There's a theme running through them all. These 6 terms all have a connection semantically, in terms of the meaning. There's something going on here. They're all to do with study. But if we look at the Chinese ones, there's a common element. If you look at the English ones, if you're just looking at the word on the page, there's nothing to tell you that all of these things have a connection. All of them feature our old friend xue. And so when you look at these words, you just glance at them, you can get that clue right there. This is something to do with learning or study. With English, we have lots of prepositions. You have to remember, you have to choose the right one. If you pick the wrong preposition, it sounds funny. Well, what about when I'm learning Chinese? Am I going to have to learn a new set of prepositions and which one goes where? No, you really don't have to worry about it. All of these verbs on the screen, you can use them in Chinese with no prepositions. If you want to say, I'm afraid of dogs, you just say, 我很怕狗. Or you can say, 我害怕狗. And that's all there is to it. So what does all of that mean for you? How can you make the most of your Chinese learning journey? The way I see it, you do an extra bit of work at the start. It does feel like a bit of an uphill slog, but you get to a certain point and you begin to make progress faster and faster. You feel like everything's coming together and making sense. And I believe that that'll be your experience too. And when you look back, you'll be able to say, like me, that it did get easier and it was well worth the trip.